Different people might look at research differently, but in my view, there are 5 categories of research. And the first one really shouldn't be overlooked. I call it personal knowledge. You know, if you've been around a while and you've traveled, and I've been fortunate enough to see much of the world over the last 40 years, you acquire personal knowledge. And the first thing I do is ask myself, well, what do I already know about a certain topic? Then the second category of research is documents. And underneath documents, we're talking about books, maps, movies, anything that might contain the material that I'm looking for to really put together a strong story. A third category is one of my favorites. It's called friends. I have friends all over the world. And in putting together Warrior Priest, my first book, I knew I wanted to have as one of the locales a hospital in London that tended to people who were hurt during the Battle of Britain. So I emailed a friend of mine in England who was old enough to have lived during World War II. And I said, Peter, could you give me the name and the location of one of those hospitals? He said, I can do better than that because I was a patient in one of those hospitals during World War II. Okay. Or in putting together God's Perfect Scar, I wanted to do a return trip to Poland, where I'd already been a couple times. So I emailed a friend who lives in a little village in the south of Poland and asked if she could meet me in Warsaw in the north and serve as my interpreter when I arrived to do research. She said she would be delighted to. I arrived on a December day. It was cold, it was wet, it was windy, and I told her, her name was Marzena, I said, you don't have to go with me, I'll just go out on my own. She said, no, 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 I want to go with you. One of the places I wanted to visit was the University of Warsaw. As we walked through the main gate of the campus, she said, oh, look there, and she was pointing to a small sign on the side of a building. I said, what does it say? She said, it says that this building is home of the history department. In we go. She introduced me in Polish to the first staff person that we encountered, and before we knew it, we had 4 or 5 members of that history department falling all over themselves to help me with the research that I was doing.
So a little bit of
All right, so friends. The fourth category is the internet. I mean, it's just such a powerful tool in terms of what you can find and how fast you can find it. And I'll cite an example. In Warrior Priest, I knew that one of the real-life people who I wanted to have a strong presence is a man by the name of General Stanislaw Sosabowski. He was a Polish general, and he escaped from Poland after the Germans took over, made his way to the west, and formed in England the first independent Polish airborne brigade. Okay? And they went on to distinguish themselves in many ways. Well, what I already knew about him wasn't quite enough to make him the presence that I really felt he needed to be in that book. So once again, late at night, I sat down in front of my computer, went to Google. 15 or 20 minutes later, I was reading a biography of him written by his son. So it was an example of finding the content and finding it fast by virtue of the internet. The fifth category, which I believe people should not overlook, I simply call luck. And luck can materialize in several ways. For example, in one of my books, I wanted to accurately, authentically depict a mountain lion hunt. And this just wasn't for games. This was to hunt a mountain lion who was destroying the sheep on an Indian reservation. And it just so happens I have an uncle who did hunt mountain lions for that purpose. Well, I went online. I really couldn't find the detail I was looking for. I went to my World Book Encyclopedia. I still couldn't find what I was looking for. So one morning, and it was an April morning in 2004, I went out to my driveway to pick up my Sunday paper, came inside, opened it up, and the front page of the travel section had a headline, "Big Cats Are Back," with this huge photo of a mountain lion, and in that article it had everything I'd been searching for. That was luck. Or during my soldiering days in Korea, a U.S. spy ship called the USS Pueblo was captured by North Korea, and its crew of 80 was held in captivity for the better part of a year. I was there at the DMZ the morning they were released, and I was given a copy of the letter of apology that the North Koreans had drafted, but which the United States had to sign before the North Koreans would release the crew. Well, it was 35 or so years later, and I'm working on this book, Fate of the Warriors, and I knew I wanted to include in that the saga of the USS Pueblo. And as I was working on it, I thought, oh wow, do you suppose it's possible that I might have kept that copy of that letter I was given when I was a soldier? So I went pawing through a box of memorabilia, and I'm really not a pack rat, but I found it, and it was very faded because there was no xerography then. It was a mimeograph copy, but it was still readable, and that meant that it could be reproduced in a readable fashion in the book. So there are two examples where luck really contributed to full and effective research.